What's up, everyone? Larry here. I am simply a comedy fan chatting with and interviewing comedians, and this is Life's a Bit with Larry Mullins. Today's guest is a comedian, actor, and singer-songwriter. He has an album titled Dreamer with his band Mike Valdes and the Noise that's available wherever you stream music. He's also host of the podcast Childlike At. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the hilarious Mike Valdes.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks again for doing this.
Of course, man.
I'm glad I got the pronunciation right. I was like, okay, I'm not that slow, but I'm like, okay, I'm pretty good at sounding stuff out.
Yeah, it's tough. It sounds like a Z, but it's spelled with an S. So the harder thing is when people spell it. So it's usually with a Z, and I'm like, no, it's with an S because I'm Cuban. It's weird. The whole cultural problem, but
is that how a lot of is that like a Cuban thing, spelling it with S?
Yeah, it's a Cuban thing is spelling it with an S. With a Z, I believe, is Spain. So yeah.
Okay.
Because Valdez is a relatively popular last name in the Spanish or in the Latin world. Apparently, that's what I've been told.
That's cool. I mean, I always get them. I always get the different cultures confused. I'm ignorant now. I used to work. I worked with a girl. Where's she from? I feel horrible. I already forgot. She's from El Salvador.
Okay.
And El Salvador is that El Salvadorian?
Yeah.
This is going to be cut out. No, I'm going to have to cut this out. People are going to show up at my door and no. All Salvadorian
people will just be like, we heard your podcast.
but all speak Spanish, correct?
Yeah.
Is there like different dialects in Spanish or stuff, or is it all just the same?
There's different dialects. Also the other thing too is that I guess the best way to say it, which it sounds funny, but it's just true. Cubans are kind of the rednecks of Spanish people, how rednecks are like, they have this like way of talking where it's English, but it's not really English.
Oh,
like they're like, go over there where I spit. And then, we're fixing to go over there. And, what is that? What is, I know those are words, but
over yonder.
Yeah. Over yonder, like things like that. Cubans are so like that.
Okay.
If there's any Cubans that are listening that are like, no, we're not. What do you think Beto like is? Beto like is our get her done. Like that's,
what is it again?
Beto like. So it's like, it's saying but like, so the first word is Beto, which is but, and then like is English, like. So you're basically saying the same thing twice. Like you're saying the same word, but pronouncing it in both languages. Like it makes no sense,
That's so funny. Like my dad's side of the family is all from like southern Virginia, so I know all about the redneck thing, like all those like country sayings. I've got a little bit of country in me, but like I can hear terms that I know exactly what they're talking about. I don't use them. I'll sometimes jokingly use them just to be funny. But over yonder and.
There's a huge difference between being from the South and being a redneck, in my opinion, because a Southern draw is charming. I agree. You're a redneck, it's like, my God, dude, like, where are you from?
It's like, I think, just Southern versus like, I wouldn't really say like my dad's side of the family were rednecks. They're just from Southern, very, very religious. Wearing camo, they like to hunt and all that stuff, but they're not in the back making moonshine, and like they're not making moonshine on like a mountain in a cabin or something.
Virginia is part of the Bible Belt, right? I would assume it is. I mean, Liberty University is like the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. So,
oh, like the Bible Belt meaning
Meaning like the red states or like the Christian states of the United States.
Oh yeah. I believe so. I think, but I mean,
it would make the most sense. I grew up very Christian, so I've been to a lot of these places. I've been to almost every church in the entire world. Yeah. And like quite literally, I was a missionary and everything.
Oh, that's cool.
And and so I know a lot about Virginia, but mostly because of Liberty University. That's where, you know, when I was a kid, that was like what I wanted to do. Like I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to go to that college. Now I'm so glad I didn't go, you know, but
that's I think that's like the big Christian university
it
around
is,
here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah. Jerry Falwell and all those people, which like, he's gotten in a lot of trouble, and so is his son and all these different kinds of things, but it makes perfect sense considering, you know, who's involved and things like that. But
yeah, there's a lot of stuff I don't like stay up to speed on. I just know it's a Christian university. Apparently there was some kind of scandal.
Yeah,
at least
there always is.
There always is a scandal whenever it's something involving
Dude, there was, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with like Christian culture and things like that. But
I'm pretty familiar. Like my parents were divorced when I was really young, but my dad's side of the family was like hardcore, like Baptist.
Okay.
Like, I mean, fire and brimstone. So I'm pretty familiar with like the culture and stuff.
Okay, cool. So I can talk about this stuff and you'll know what I'm talking about. But like, cause that's what I grew up learning. I don't necessarily believe all that stuff anymore, but that's what I grew up learning. And man, like I forgot what my point was that I was going to make about liberty, but yeah, like, yeah, it's that. Oh, what I was going to say is like, that the Bible is like scandals in the church go all the way back to the Bible. Like that's like, if you believe in Jesus, like that's why Jesus came to earth, is because of scandals happening in the church. So of course scandals are going to happen in the church. It's never going to stop because we're people, you know? And like, that's kind of the funny thing about like, you know, churches and all that kind of stuff. And like these are all reasons why, like I used to work in church and all that stuff, which like has so much to do with stand up, at least I think, you know.
And I don't want to like cut you off, but like I'm a musician too, and I was like involved in the church band, and I would also the youth version, like the little kids, I would give like bass lessons and stuff, and I'd help them out. But like hope this isn't like a bad way to start a podcast. I know but I'm saying hopefully nobody, like when they're listening to this, they're like, oh, they're talking about this and that. I'm turning this off. But but no, like I mean, I've always, you know, that's just how I was brought up. My basic principles are, I believe in heaven and hell, good and evil. You know what I mean? I'm just like, if you're a good person, I think you'll be okay.
Right.
That's the way I look at it, you know. But I tried, you know, when I was a kid, my dad like forced me to go. And then like when in my early 20s, I went again for a few years, and then I came to conclusion that at least where I was going, there were a lot of hypocrites, and I'm like, I shouldn't have to go to a building to prove something. That's you're speaking my truth right now. That's exactly where I'm at. And the irony of the whole thing is, if you believe in Jesus, that's what Jesus was talking about. Like he quite literally, that was his whole message. His whole message wasn't go to this church and make sure you buy a t-shirt that has my face on it. And like, you know, also make sure you have a bumper sticker that lets everyone know you believe in me. Like he wasn't like that. He wasn't like that. You know, I've said it so many times where like, you know, my church and everything had like a bookstore with like all these different Bibles and books and CDs and all this stuff that was like so like a part of the culture. And like, you know, and I grew up listening to Christian music, and now thinking about Christian music, it's like, why does that even exist? Like, it's so
like, that's so alienating. Like, why does that, like I have different problems from other people? Like, what? It's so alienating, and it makes no sense. Like, everybody feels heartbreak. Everybody feels like they're alone. Everybody feels sometimes that there might not be a God. And everybody also feels like sometimes God is on their side because this is a really, you know, a great thing happened or whatever the case. Yeah. Everybody has these hills and valleys. Why in the world? Like, I don't know. It's just strange, like, to think about it. I feel like my personal opinion is, like, I feel like if we could listen to what God said, like, he would probably be like, hey, you should probably tone it down. Like, I feel like these songs are getting, like, kind of weird. You know, yeah, like, no, it's getting like a little sexual, you know. It's 9 in the morning. You know, like, I know. Let's calm it down.
I get what you're saying about the whole alienating thing, because I went through that phase where I tried listening, and some of it is good. I'm not gonna lie, some of it is good, but, like, of course, it got to the point where that's all I was listening to, and I'm like, I miss my regular music. And at the end of the day, music is music. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, I want to go back, and I don't want to feel like I'm sinning because I'm listening to Green Day, or, you know, right. I want to listen to the music that I love, and I shouldn't have to listen to. And I kind of get what you mean, like. It's kind of like, I don't know, like, blowing him up. Like, you shouldn't have to, like, it's all this, just like you said, I'm pretty sure, you know, at least I feel he'd be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you making, like, you're making songs about me? I'm flattered, but why are you doing this? You know, like, right. That's not what I'm about, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at, you know, and, but yeah, and it's funny, you know, this subject, I guess it's just because of who I am and all that stuff, but this subject comes up so much in so many podcasts because it's just me. It's like, it's my life. It's who I've been, you know, my entire life. And yeah, like, it's just, I feel like it's getting to a point, especially, and I'm kind of glad, where, like, people in our generation and a little bit younger are starting to see, like, I don't know, man, this whole thing is kind of weird. Like, I don't know if I necessarily, you know, like, I don't know. It's a weird thing to talk about spirituality and all that stuff, because I'm also of the type of person that, like, believe whatever you want as long as you're not hurting yourself or other people. Yeah. And, like, because at the end of the day, man, this world sucks, and whatever's stopping you from putting a bullet in your brain, go for it. You know what I mean? Like, that's
exactly.
But yeah, man. But yeah, anyway, comedy, right?
Yeah, no. But this is good conversation, though, because like, it's because, you know, everybody's different, and this is all. I also started this podcast, like, as a way to get to know comedians, you know? Yeah. Because I was telling somebody else that, like, growing up, like, I would always like to watch specials and listen to, like, the huge comics, you know, like, that anybody in the world would know their name, even if they're not into comedy, you know? And then I've just been discovering kind of, like, the mid to lower level or up and coming, that kind of, like, I refer to them as, like, the indie artists, you know, of comedy, you know, and of course, and there's so many good comics out there, that, and I'm just like, I've said, like, I'm like a sponge, I'm soaking everything up, you know, because like, I've said this several times on a few of my past episodes, and I just don't care anymore, but, like, I absolutely despise 90% of what's on Netflix. Sure. And that's me. And then, like, you know, and I was totally fine and comfortable with, you know, starting the conversation all like that with you, because, like, a good friend of mine is very, I wouldn't say, like, religious, but we've been having a lot of that, you know, Bible talk type stuff lately, and and we're normal people, like, we drop F-bombs and, like, you know, but I'm, like, just like you said, like, at the end of the day,
by the way, not the other F-bomb.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But, like, I agree with you. Like at the end of the day, if you're not hurting yourself or others, then what's the problem?
Of course.
And that's like, and I feel like sometimes like, you know, like, and nobody's perfect. Everybody's flawed. And like, we'll be like, just like talking shit. Like, you know, talking shits when we like, you know, I don't know, somebody does a certain thing on Instagram every day that's like super annoying. And then we start like talking shit about them, which basically just means, and I'm like, hey, it's not talking shit if it's true.
Right.
But no, but it's like, I'm not hurting them in the sense that I'm not telling them like, hey, this is why are you know what I mean? It's
of course.
And I feel a little dirty after I do it. And I was like, but I think he knows I have good intentions. I'm not physically hurting someone or,
sure,
you know, telling someone to go kill themselves or something.
Of course, there's a complete difference between, for example, like watching a bad movie and roasting it and just like having fun doing that than like finding the person who made the movie and tell him that he should kill himself.
Yeah.
There's a complete difference.
That's the perfect, you know, that's the perfect analogy. And,
yeah. Like there's nothing wrong with watching a movie and roasting it. Like, you know, one of my best memories that I've had as of recently, I went and visited my best friend and his wife a few months ago, and we watched Hamilton, and we were just making fun of not because it was bad. We were making fun of the fact that everyone on that stage is so good. Yeah. And yet it stars Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's not as good as everyone else. Mm-hmm. And so it was so funny to think, because it was just like, everyone is singing leaps and bounds around this guy, man. Like, he's not that good, but he wrote all the music, so everyone gives him a pass because he wrote all the music. And so we were just making fun of like what it would be like to just see a nerd like writing a musical and being like, man, nobody tells me I can do anything. I'm gonna write a musical where 3 girls are in love with me at the same time. Like, you know, and it's just funny, like imagining that, you know. Like he seemed like a kid that won a contest, you know, like be of the lead in your favorite musical. Like, it's like, to me, that's what it is. And I'm sure there's probably going to be people that listen to your podcast that are like, Hamilton is a national treasure.
Oh yeah. I know.
But,
I know some people that like swear by that. And I'm like, I haven't even seen it. So
look, man, it's great. I personally think it's super entertaining. But it is absolutely hilarious that Lin-Manuel Miranda is in it, at least to me, because everyone is so much better than him. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
like it's noticeable how much better everyone else is than him. Yeah, it's hilarious. I would recommend it. Watch it with friends and laugh at it, I would say.
And I kind of like, I do that to good movies sometimes. The funny thing is, like, movies that I find good are sometimes not well reviewed movies. Mm-hmm. You know, like I had the whole Rotten Tomatoes thing I don't agree with, because there's some movies that are rated very low that I love.
Yeah,
and
absolutely,
and vice versa. But normally anything that they rate high, I end up liking, which is weird. I just don't agree with some of their lower rated ones.
Sure, and you can say that about most art in all reality, because like that's what makes art so great. Is like, you know, I think what makes art so great is that I can talk to you about a movie that I absolutely love and you absolutely hate it, and I think that that's really cool. Because it's now a conversation, you know, and we can, you know, of course, there's plenty of people that you can't have a conversation with about these things.
Yeah, it's all subjective. My friend said, you know, if we agree, then it wouldn't really be a good conversation. It could be funny, you know, like, oh, you know, but.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all good art is a conversation, in my opinion, you know. But yeah, man, and but yeah, that's where I'm at. So
shifting gears, like how long have you been doing stand up? Like, when did you decide, like, I want to try this? I want to.
Yeah, so I have been doing stand up for about 5 years and maybe more. But I feel like 2020 is a year that no one's counting. So
yeah,
it kind of feels like that, where you're like, yeah, last year. And actually it was 2 years ago, but cause like nobody really counts 2020. But yeah, I've been doing it for about 5 years. And first and foremost, I'm an actor. That's like what I get paid for. That's, I get paid for stand up and for playing shows as a musician and things like that as well. But my main job, where I'm getting money to be able to survive, is I'm an actor. And so I moved to Los Angeles at the time, and I found a manager who met with me and told me, hey, you should take improv classes because you need to keep your performing blade sharp and all these different kinds of things. So I said, okay. And I researched how much UCB classes were, and I couldn't afford it. And so I just had this epiphany that was like, well, stand-up is free. I'll just try stand-up. And I tried it, and I fell in love with it. And I kind of became a stand-up comic by accident. Like, I fell in love with it in a very reverse way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But in a way, I think because I've always been a fan of stand-up. Stand-up has always been the thing that I've loved. And as a performer, I'm an actor. I'm a singer-songwriter. I play a whole bunch of different instruments. I write music. I do all these different things in the entertainment business. But at the time before I became a stand-up was the thing that I nerded out about, and I put on this pedestal as I could never do that.
Yeah, that's I think that's one of my like sick fantasies, and now I'm just too old. And I don't know, with the pandemic, shows are happening. It's just a very different vibe. But I'm just like, because I love watching and listening to it. I'm like, man, I couldn't. There's no way I could like get up on stage and try to be funny. Like, I remember back in high school, like right out of high school, I was in a few bands, and it's like, man, I have incredible stage fright. And whenever I would get up on stage, I'd clam up, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to do horribly. And then, once we start, I'm fine. It's just getting over that initial, But but I wanted to ask too, like, that's so cool that you do all of that.
Right.
Like, that's like literally everything cool, like
I hope so. I guess.
To be able to act and to also be in a band and do something really fun and funny, like, that's awesome. Like, how do you balance all of that?
So it's funny because it's this crossroad that I have about myself, but at the same time, I feel like I love that about me. So if this makes any sense, like, I've always been an anomaly in a lot of ways. So like, I've always been somebody who's like 1 foot here, 1 foot there, can't really describe exactly who I am in a cubbyhole. Yeah. And people love to put people in boxes because it's easy. I go, okay, I know Larry. Larry has a beard. He has a red hoodie, and now he's in my red hoodie cubbyhole. He's in my beard cubbyhole, and that's it. And I've never been that person. I've always been somebody who, like, I get what's called the backhanded compliment way too much. Like, that's always been my thing, where people will come up to me after a show where me and my band tore the roof off the place, and someone will come up to me and be like, wow, you don't look like you could sing that well, or whatever. And I'm like, what is that even supposed to mean? Like, I had no idea you'd be that good, and people, I've had a lot of drunk women tell me this after shows at comedy shows. Like, I had no idea you'd be that funny. Like, what? Like, what do I look like to you? Like,
yeah, I know. Like, what? It's kind of like that's definitely like judging a book by its cover. you know.
Yeah, I've always been that person. And so so that's why it's so difficult when people are like, so what do you do? Like, are you an actor? Are you a singer-songwriter? And I'm like, I'm everything. I'm Mike Valdes. You know,
yeah, like I'm an entertainer.
Yeah, I'm an entertainer. I'm a performer. Like, the easiest word to say is performer.
Yeah.
Like, that's because everything involves performance. So that's the easiest way to say it. But yeah, and thankfully it's starting to get a little bit easier to understand because people like Donald Glover are becoming mainstream names, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and, you know, all these people that do multiple things, multi-hyphenate people, you know, are becoming more mainstream. It's a little easier to explain, you know, but I've been like that forever, you know, like it's always been the thing that I do. And when it comes, I'm sorry, what were we going to say?
You can also kind of like separate, like when you're doing stand-up, you're doing stand-up. When you're doing the band, like that's this part of me, you know? And
right. And that's kind of the thing that has been tough to explain to people as well, because people are like, you're such a good singer, why don't you do funny music? And I'm like, because the moment I make a serious song, no one's going to take me seriously. You know, like, that's why I don't do that, you know? And so, you know, and of course I grew up a punk rock kid. Like I listened to a bunch of punk rock bands growing up and things like that. And, I've always thought that punk rock and comedy have so much in common, you know, at least in my opinion. You know, if you were to describe a really good comedy show, you would say, it's in a tight room, low ceilings. People are really close to each other, like elbows are touching, you know, that kind of thing. Everyone's laughing at the same time. The energy is all one thing. You're also describing a really good punk show where like everybody's extremely tight. Everybody's really sweaty. And before the band, everybody is like stressed out and like anxious that there's so many people, but then the band starts playing, and then by the end of the show everybody feels like a family.
Because that's like all alternative and punk, that's my wheelhouse.
Yep. That's what I play. That's my genre.
And I like talk about the indie. Like I remember, like I like love all these indie bands that ended up blowing up. Like I remember seeing at this club in Baltimore, like Low Ceilings. I remember seeing Yellow Card before they blew up. Oh yeah. And like they had just started getting really popular. This was like probably right before Ocean Avenue came out.
Right.
And I mean, people knew them, but the whole world didn't know them. And it was crazy. Like there were so many people in there, and there was no stage, so they were like ground level with the crowd. And it was just awesome. It was awesome. That's the kind of stuff I like.
Of course, man. Those are the type of shows that I love. And I'm very, the style of music that I play is piano rock. So it's very similar to Something Corporate, Jack's Mannequin, stuff like that.
Yeah, I loved Something Corporate.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so you would love what I do. But yeah, it's I mean, I've been playing with, I've been writing, because technically I write all the music and then I incorporate the band for live shows. And so I've been writing music since I was in high school. And yeah, like it's been like 10 years, 15 years, maybe something like that. I don't know. A long time. Been writing music for a long time. A lot of really bad songs, and then a few good ones that ended up being on albums, you know?
Now, like with the comedy, like I've always wondered, like, because all the behind the scenes stuff fascinates me, and like your on your website, the bit about Rihanna and the song Work, like I was cracking up because like that's
thanks, man.
Your take on it, because I ask pretty much everyone this question, like how do you, like, in terms of stand up, how do you come up with material? Are you just like, that sounds funny, or do you actually write stuff down? Or
man, That is so funny that you asked me that, because I don't know if I have a process, because like, I mean, I probably do, as we talk it out, you'll probably be like, oh, well, this is your process or whatever. But, I've always been the type of person that like, especially as an actor and things like that, like the thing that I needed to do when I started was learn how to write basically like observational one-liners to then explain a bit, because my favorite thing about stand-up is being silly. Yeah. Like my favorite thing about stand-up is doing a stupid voice and dancing around. That's my favorite thing about stand-up. But the only way for me to make that makes sense to people is to give them an appropriate setup to it, essentially. So and it's really funny because like I as a musician and things like that, I was told this by a comic at a show, and he was like, I was telling him that I was in a band, and he goes, oh, that doesn't surprise me. And I go, why? Because I sing, Work by Rihanna or whatever. And he goes, no, just because all of your bits are very musical. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, because even when you tell a story, it's like you're singing a song. It's like how you talk. You speak like you're singing a song. And I feel like that's a very common Latin trait. Like Latinos are a lot like that. Yeah. It's a common phrase, I believe, in I heard it from Puerto Rico, but it could be a Cuban thing as well. Is they say cántame la cuenta, which means sing me the story. And so because like that's how a lot of us speak. We speak in this very like, it's how we say things as opposed to like saying things. I was going to say that's the truth of like a lot of comedy for me, is sometimes I will laugh at just how someone said something as opposed to what they said.
Yeah, and I've also heard too, and I've noticed like at least some comics, like it has like the rhythm of music, like it has a certain rhythm to it, where it just kind of like, I don't know, where it flows, like everything I've learned about comedy, I've learned just from talking to comedians, right? And just watching so much stuff, because I just became, like I said, and I didn't do like a complete, not nosedive, but but when the pandemic started, I wasn't like depressed or anything, but I'm just like, I love laughing, so I'm like, I'm just gonna start. I was turned on to something, and then, any comics that these two comics mentioned, I started looking them up, and then I started looking other people up, and it's just been like a rabbit hole. That's how I discover like bands on iTunes, like people who like this band also listen to them, and then sometimes I'll just randomly listen because I think the album cover looks cool. Yeah,
you're exactly like me when it comes to music. That's exactly how I am. And when I started, when I started becoming obsessed with comedy, it was because I was very surface level when I started. So like, I mean, going back to like, us talking about like Christian stuff, like the first comedian I ever listened to was a guy named Mike Warnke, who's a Christian comedian. And in all reality, he was just a preacher that was funnier than any preacher I had ever heard. That's really all he was, because he had a message and things like that. He did like 20-25 minutes of like observational, like funny kind of stuff. And then he had like a message at the end, like a very Baptist, like kind of message. And I was like, oh man, that's cool. Like I like a preacher like that. And then, through that ended up finding, because I became obsessed with movies, found Eddie Murphy. and thought it was Eddie Murphy's Delirious, and thought it was just a movie with Eddie Murphy because I like The Nutty Professor and I like movies like that. I thought it was just a movie. I didn't know what stand-up was, and I picked it up and I watched it, and I'm like, oh, he's just preaching. And that's essentially, to you, that's like how it like started making sense, where I was like, oh, stand-up is just preaching, except you don't have an altar call.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't call the band up to start playing a song for everybody to start crying.
And that's like that. And I've kind of noticed that too. Like my style, the style of comedy I like, I don't like comedy like that's from start to finish dirty. I don't like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like a little bit of dirty, inappropriate, really dark stuff mixed with clean stuff. It's got to be like a good mix of everything.
Of course.
And I like just like actual jokes. I tend to like kind of stray away from like those long drawn out like stories. Yeah. Certain people can pull them off really well, but I'm just more of like I like the quick jokes, like boom, boom, done, like one-liner type things. Like that's what I like.
I'm a fan of it all, man. I like everything. And which is why it's kind of difficult to say what my process is, because, which I guess it's, in a way it's good that, because like, I've had other people tell me, like, for example, I have a bit about Full House, and like I've had people tell me that like it would literally be impossible for another comic to steal that from you, because it is so Mike Valdes. Like, that's just it's so who you are. Yeah. That like it would be obvious that somebody stole it if somebody stole it from you, and so and I've been lucky that a lot of the jokes that I do are like that, where it's like, because it's, to me, man, I learned this from a podcast that I listened to with a comedian. I don't even remember who it was, but he was like, your job as a comedian is to not make people laugh. It's to let people in on what you think is funny. And that is just, that's 100% who I am.
That's a good way to look at it. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, like and that's why a lot of, like, I've had some comics, like, I feel like they don't say anything, but like, I feel like they don't respect me because to them, they're like writing jokes or they tell stories. And like, to them, I'm just like this kid who makes noises and like jingles keys in the air, like I'm just like on stage, like da 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 da, and like, and everybody's like, this guy's hilarious, and they're like, oh, but I have like a bit about my kids or whatever. Like I have 3 kids to be funny, like, and I'm like, I don't know, man, that's just who I am. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, but yeah, it's a weird thing, because when I'm on stage as a stand-up, like I do, I let the vulnerable side of me get to the comedy sometimes, which is why some of my one-liners are like hit really hard, like for example, like this joke I have about Netflix. It's a one-liner, but it's like, Netflix is the best relationship because it's the only relationship that gives you more than you can handle, but still keeps asking if you wish to continue. Like, it's a very vulnerable, like, heartbreak joke, really. Yeah. But it's just like funny, like at the same time. So I let that get to me sometimes, but for majority of the time, I'm just a silly goose, man. Like, I just like being silly on stage, and that's my favorite kind of thing. Like, some people would be, I don't know if people would feel this way, but sometimes I get nervous that people would be like, man, he laughs at his own jokes. That's stupid. And it's like, here's a fun fact and a little bit of a behind the curtain thought that I'm about to give you. if you see a comic laughing at his own joke, he doesn't think it's funny. He's told it 10,000 times. He's doing that on purpose. And it's true. He's doing it on purpose because he wants you to know that he's also having fun.
Yeah, and I honestly, I like when I see a comic kind of laugh at themselves. I just think that, I think that's funny. That kind of adds to it.
Yeah, there's people that don't like that kind of stuff. And to me, that's like my favorite part of it. Like it's just a reminder that the person doing their job is loving their job.
Yeah, I think I think it makes them more human too.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and not only that, like when I laugh at my own jokes, like I don't write, say this line and then you laugh at yourself here. Like I don't do that.
Yeah.
I laugh at the room, or I laugh at the next thing that I'm thinking, or I laugh at whatever. I'm just in the moment. Yeah. Like sometimes I'll laugh because some lady has a crazy laugh and I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
You know,
like
and
my friend and I, like, will, like, and it kind of goes along with what you're saying, but like I could just be sitting there in silence and something random could pop in my head and I'll just bust out laughing.
That happens to me so much.
Because
dude.
I think it's funny. And I'm like, ask somebody, you ever have something just pop into your head and you just start laughing? It's just the stupidest thing in the world. You just start cracking up. Like, I love that.
This happened to me a couple of days ago where my mom called me out of the blue and was like, what were you laughing at like 7:30 in the morning? Were you watching a video or Netflix or something? And I go, no, I woke up and I just thought of this crazy thing that happened like 13 years ago and I just couldn't stop laughing at it. And she heard the laugh from all the way around the house, you know, like, but yeah, like I'm the same way, man. If I just love laughing. And laughter, I also feel that laughter is contagious.
Yeah.
And it's all about energy, man. Like I want to bring, you know, to quote Brody Stevens, I want to bring positive energy into the comedy world and things like that. Because look, man, there's plenty of depressed comedians. There's plenty of overweight comedians that are going to talk about how fat they are. There's plenty of girl comedians that are going to talk about how hard it is to be a girl. There's going to be plenty of that. But sometimes you can just make fun of farts, you know, and that's what I do. You know?
Yeah, and I guess like I love. Like my type of personality, I love, I guess you would call it like potty humor, you know,
sure.
Toilet humor, you know, like I just, you know, I could be out like with my cousin or something. We'll be out at like the mall or something. We'll go into like a public restroom and it'll smell foul and we'll like look at each other and make noises and then we'll just bust out laughing. But that's the kind of immature sense of humor I have, you know, like I'm not completely like, I know when to be serious, but like that's just the kind of stuff that makes me laugh. Like I'm a human being.
Of course.
I would like to think that any normal person would laugh at something like that.
Yeah, and look, man, and that's the exact point that I was going to make, dude. The guy that can go on stage and make fun of a song by Rihanna and like make fun of like how it's like, you know, make fun of the lyrics and how she sings it and all these different kinds of things, can also write music that comes from a very vulnerable place, that is about heartbreak, that is about whatever the case. You know, because I'm a person and I have different emotions and things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, the main goal, like what I really want to do with my stand up and all that kind of stuff is to tour the stand up and the band at the same time. So essentially bring punk rock into the comedy world. That would basically be what the main goal of it all would be.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that's never really been done before, which is also why it's scary, because it's never been done before. But you know, you got to give it a shot. So I hopefully once this thing lifts and everybody isn't, you know, everybody gets the vaccine and isn't scared to go out anymore, then we can start something. Because in all reality, man, like comedy has been okay. It's definitely not the same at all. But I'm still playing shows, definitely not the same because everybody's separated, everybody's wearing a mask. So, the laughs don't feel like laughs. I've filmed myself during shows on like sold out shows, which like really means it's like 50% capacity, maybe even less than that. And the videos aren't even usable because it seems like I'm bombing.
Yeah.
You can't even hear the people laughing that well, so, it's a tough time, and even more so for bands, because unless you're doing like a live stream show or whatever the case, which has been a really smart thing that a lot of bands have done.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Especially if you have the money for the production. Cause like, I don't know if you're a fan, but the way that Under Oath did it, where it's just like,
and Berlin has been doing them too.
And Berlin, I mean, where it's, Emery, all these different bands where the production side of it is just nuts. And in all reality, their shows, that one live stream show made more revenue than a whole tour because the entire world can watch it.
Yep.
Which is amazing. But, which is a really cool thing that you can do now as a band that you could never do before, where, you can sound perfect and look perfect and all that stuff, where, a live show is more of an experience than it is a band being perfect and sounding exactly like the album and, like all this different kind of stuff. But yeah, I think the last thing to come back is going to be concerts. I think that's the very last thing.
And where are you at?
I'm in Miami, Florida right now.
Florida. I love Florida. I was in Orlando in August.
Oh, nice.
In August, I was in Orlando. I said like the last live show I went to was Blink-182 when they toured with Lil Wayne and Neck Deep.
Oh yeah,
and that was
the weirdest tour of all time.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, what? And it was I want to say it was July of I think 2019.
Okay.
And it was awesome. I'm like, man, I wish they would do a live stream show, so live stream shows, I mean, they're different, but they're cool. Like I bought tickets to one of the Amberlin ones and I sat in my bed on my laptop and just watched them. Like, oh, this is cool. I get to see them play a whole album and just,
I did the same thing for the Starting Line. They did, they for their anniversary of Based on a True Story and for Direction, they did the whole album front to back, and then they did another show that was just like hits, so it was just like Best of Me and like all these different songs. And yeah, it was the same as you. I had it on my phone and then I just airdropped it to my TV and just sang along with the band in my room. It's just in my underwear singing songs. And
great.
like and it works. Like it's not necessarily something that's gonna work a lot. Like it's not. I highly doubt that if. I would say the biggest band that has done this is Under Oath.
Yeah.
They got a whole article on Forbes written about them where it was just like, holy crap, can you believe that so many people bought tickets to this one show?
Yeah.
And they did it for 3 nights. So that's the crazy thing, is that they actually said it in the article. They made more money off of one show than they did off of an entire world tour for 1 year.
It's also
in
crazy.
One show.
It's crazy too, because not just any band can do one of those live stream things. It has
Of
to be
course.
like a bigger band that they know they're going to sell tickets. Like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing, is what I'm saying is someone like Blink or anyone really, like freaking who cares, like Bob Dylan, like I don't know, whoever, they would make a crazy amount of money doing that stuff. And of course you can do it for other reasons, like some people, like Post Malone did one for charity that was really awesome. I don't know if you saw that, but it was a Nirvana tribute concert, and he just did all Nirvana songs with Travis Barker, and it was great. It was great.
And and also in terms of comedy too, like I recently, I was maybe like 2 months ago, I bought tickets. There was a comedy show, and they had, like, of course, the limited in audience, but they also live streamed it as well.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool. Like, they couldn't hear me laughing, but it was still nice.
Yeah. And the thing about those is, as a comedy fan, I'm all about it. But as a comedian,
yeah,
I can't do it. Like, it's hard. Like, I can do it, I guess, because, like, you know, you can have people unmute their microphones and things like that. But depending on the show, sometimes people are like, no, just everybody mute your microphone and, you know, show emojis or whatever. It's
crazy because when I got into, like, comedy hardcore at the pandemic, the first thing I went to was one of those Zoom shows. And it was, you know, well... You know, and the host was like, "Hey guys, come on, unmute your microphones." And I was the first person to unmute my microphone. Yeah. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, if I was, I would want to hear people laughing at me.
Of course.
So, like, I'm gonna unmute it. And then that one I told you about was actually, like, it was the comics on stage at a venue with an audience. They just had the cameras live streaming it as well.
Okay.
And
nice.
And then I've been to one, like, in-person one about half an hour away from my house. That was cool. It was distance. They had, like, groups of, like, 2 seats separated by tables, and it was still fun though, you know.
Who played? Was it local or?
It was Mark Normand.
Nice.
And this one guy from Virginia, and the host was some guy from Maryland. And
okay.
It's funny, all of which I've had on here, which is funny. Yeah. But it was cool though. I mean, I had, like, the mask hanging down. I ordered a beer, ordered some food. Yeah. We were sitting there, you know. But I mean, it was responsibly done. People were spaced out enough, and I'm like, I just want to laugh. I got to do something because. Like, I remember when I bought tickets, I was like, please don't cancel this. Please don't cancel this.
Course,
because,
man.
like, I want to go do something in person.
Yeah.
Like an in-person form of entertainment.
Yeah, man. People are aching for it. I mean, even if it's something as simple as dining indoors.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, who would ever think that would be something that you would miss?
In Virginia, when stuff started reopening, and it's funny, too, because I've never been to a Hooters, and the first place I went was Hooters. My cousin and I was like, let's go to Hooters. And there was, like, literally nobody in there. And, like, but it felt so good to just sit down at a table inside. Like, oh, I missed this.
Yeah, man.
So great.
It's got to be. Absolutely.
Now I wanted to switch gears. Probably the last thing we'll talk about is your podcast, Childlike At Best. Like, how did that start? Like, how, and it was like, I like learning stuff like this. Like, how'd you come up with the name? Like, where'd the idea behind it come from?
That's great. So I did the podcast about, I've always loved podcasts. I've always wanted to do one. And I had other podcasts that I did, you know, that were a little bit of less quality. I had one with my friends called Netflix and Chill. And it was just us watching really bad movies on Netflix and giving you commentary that you didn't ask for. And
I like that.
And then it wasn't a bad idea. It was just, I don't know. It just wasn't good quality. At least like the sound. And then I did another one that was more based on theme parks and things like that with a buddy of mine. And the idea that I had for that, we did a regular show that was, you know, theme park news and things like that, because we're nerdy about theme parks. And then I told him that I would do it, but I want to have my own show where we review theme park attractions that don't exist. And so I would make up these fake theme park attractions and we would review them as if we went on them. And it was one of those, like, funny ideas, but, like, just because of the quality, I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I still have it. I might release it one of these days as, like, a bonus one week. But, you know, something that has always fascinated me is childhood and just nostalgia and like how people grew up and things like that, because I feel like how you grew up has so much to do with who you are now.
Yeah.
And there's also something that I have noticed when you become an adult is that you lose your sense of childlike wonder. You lose your sense of magic because the world now tells you that you can't do something or you will never be able to do something for whatever circumstance. Yet when you were a kid, all you needed was a box and you were in a rocket ship.
Yeah.
You know, you could literally do whatever you wanted and no one can tell you no, you know, and I'm just all about bringing childlike wonder, man. Like that is, and I'm so thankful that I started doing that podcast, because I feel like that podcast and learning about other people and learning about myself has really taught me about who I am as a performer and what I want to put out there. And I very quickly started to see who I was as a comedian and was like, okay, I want to be like the big kid that reminds you that it's okay to still be a kid, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I'm still a kid, definitely. Like and I'm not even afraid to admit this and I don't, you know, listener base, of course, that'll grow naturally over time. This is still, I mean, I just started this in September. It's still brand new in my opinion.
Yeah.
And, but I will spend an hour in a toy store.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up with the best Saturday morning cartoons ever. G.I. Joe, Transformers, Thundercats, Masters of the Universe. Like, I love all that stuff. So, like, you reminiscing about like, the nostalgia of, like, all the, you know, being a kid, not having, like, a care in the world. And
right. Absolutely. Yeah, man. And it's so good to bring yourself back there sometimes, you know, and like the truth is, and like, you know, to get kind of serious for a second, like it's something that I've talked about on stage, and it's just, to me, man, like it feels like all of us are still kids trapped in adult costumes. You know, because we are still these kids who argue about the pettiest things. And, you know, the analogy that I would use on stage is that we're all playing with our Power Ranger action figures, and the thing that we think holds power in those toys is what color they are or what gender they are or whatever. And the truth is, none of those things give them powers. What gives them power is unity. That's what gives them power. And we're so separate from each other because we don't want to play with anyone else. We only want to play with ourselves. And that's just not the way that we should be living, man. I mean, one of the most beautiful videos I've ever seen on the internet. It is so simple. It is the most simple video I've ever seen. I can't watch it because it'll make me A, cry, and B, want a baby. and it's this video of these two kids. One of them is a white kid, one of them is a black kid, and they're running towards each other like they haven't seen each other in days. And they're so excited to see each other. And they run towards each other and they give each other a big hug. And one of them's like, "How are you, dude?" And I'm like, yes, dude, that right there is why childhood is awesome, because when you were a kid, nobody told you to hate people. Like, you didn't hate people. The only reason why you decided to hate people was because someone told you to hate people. Yeah. You know, like somebody told you, you know what? I don't like this specific kind of person or this specific type of thing because this, and this. And I'm like, well, if dad thinks that, then I think that, or whatever the case. And that's just not the way it should be, man. When you're a kid, you love everybody and you want to include everybody. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter how much money they do or don't have, you know. And that's also the other thing about being a kid. You didn't know you were poor until the day you found out you were poor. Yeah. You know, like, you know, you could literally, you know, for me, I didn't know I was poor until I was like 10. like I just thought I was living a regular life. And then somebody was like, you don't have Disney Channel? Like, you don't have, and I'm like, yeah, I only have 3 channels, and I'm really only allowed the Christian channel or whatever. And they're like, you're poor. Like, that's how I found out I was poor.
Yeah, it's and being like a kid, like all like the innocence and everything, there's like no, just like you said, you don't hate anybody or dislike somebody until you learn to do that. Like in the high school, or a certain grade in high school, like, oh, well, that group isn't cool, and that, and it's that, it blows my mind, because you're absolutely right, because like I always had like a close group of friends I hung out with, and I'm just like, I try not to judge anybody, and I just try to treat everybody equally. Like, treat others as you want to be treated. Like, that's how that's how I am anyways. I do my best to be that way.
Yeah, that's the best way to live, man. And the thing also that I learned, and I didn't actually start doing this until relatively recently on my show, because at first I just wanted the show to be fun. I just wanted the show to be about making each other laugh and talking about weird movies that we liked when we were kids, and talking about cereal, and just a barrel of laughs. And then after a while, I started realizing the message of what my show could be, and realizing how much I love that message, and how much that message speaks to me. And the more people I talk to, the more people are like, holy shit, that is really resonating with me, you know? And I'm like, yeah, dude, because right now it feels like childlike wonder is like a thing of the past, and it shouldn't have to be like that. And I think, the thing that I've been doing lately is I've been asking people what advice they would give to themselves as a kid now, and also what that kid would think of who they are now.
Oh, wow.
Which I think is so important, because it reminds you of the struggle that you did, or that you had to go through to get to where you are, because you look at these things and you're like, man, I've only done this, and this, and I wish I could do this. And especially in the age of Instagram, where it feels like everybody's more successful than you, and the truth is, man, if you were to talk to that 8-year-old or 10-year-old version of you, they would be so stoked that you are where you are, or surprised at, like, they would be like, really, you're doing this, or whatever, or there's so many different ways that you can look at it, or you can talk to that kid and realize where you want to be, and then be inspired by that child that's inside of you,
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to have that sense of childlike wonder and never lose it, man. I think that's so important, and I want to bring that to people, and that's why I love doing the show. I mean, of course, I love making people laugh and talking about Nickelodeon, but at the same time, the real true message is just, never lose that sense of childlike wonder.
Well, that's awesome, and that's a good note to end on.
Hell yeah.
I want to thank you again for doing this.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me. This was an honor.
I'm going to look at the calendar really quick. So this will be out on Friday the 12th of March.
Okay.
So
sweet.
Is there anything, I don't know if you have anything like date related, but just anything you want to plug, talk about? Of course. Of course, in the I believe in the intro, I mentioned your album, I mentioned your podcast. Maybe just mention whatever you want to mention. Sure.
Yeah, man. Of course. So I have an Instagram. I just I can afford an Instagram, so I have one. And I'm joking. My Instagram is at Mike Valdes. It's MikeValdes. And my website is whoismikevaldes.com. You'll be able to find comedy clips. You can find my music there. I also have an album with my band, Mike Valdes and the Noise, that's called Dreamer. If you like piano rock or any type of like alternative pop rock kind of stuff, you'll really dig that. And I also have a podcast called Childlike At Best with Mike Valdes. That's available everywhere where you can find podcasts. And if you're in the Miami area, I'm doing a show on April 20th at the Miami Improv. And other than that, that is the only future show that I have booked right now that I can think of for that is around this area of time. But yeah, if you're in the area, I'd love to see you. Come say hi. And yeah, other than that, just follow me on Instagram and DM me, and we'll hang out and talk.
Quick question about your website. On your
Of
profile, it says it's IamMikeValdez.com. Is that is that the wrong address? You said who is?
So this is,
or are both of those? You bought both of those domains.
I bought both of them on purpose. Yeah, I bought both of them on purpose. So it's who is Mike Valdes, and then it changes on your browser, and it answers that question for you. Okay. So yeah,
that's funny. That's smart too. I like how you did that.
Thanks, man.
Well, then again, thank you so much again for doing this. It was great meeting you and talking to you. This has been great, probably out of all of them so far, this has been like the most rounded conversation I've had since I started this.
Yeah, man.
We literally we covered everything. We covered everything. We covered, culture, we covered JC, we covered comedy, movies, everything. It's great.
Exactly. Yes, dude. Well, this was so fun, man.
All right. Thanks again
for having me.
I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. See you later, Larry.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
That concludes this week's episode of Life Say Bit with Larry Mullins. Please follow the podcast on all social media at Life Say Bit Pod. If you are listening, please follow, rate, subscribe, and write a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell your friends. While you're at it, please follow Mike Valdes on Instagram at Mike Valdes. Visit his website, IamMikeValdes.com. And lastly, be sure to check out his podcast, Childlike At Best, available wherever you get your favorite pods. Thank you so much for the support, and I'll catch you on the next one.